Okay, we're going to start it here with the webinar. Uh, Thank everyone for joining tonight. My name is Jonathan Coholich. I'm part of the Navionics Marine Specialists team. I'm located right out of Western PA, for about an hour east of Pittsburgh. Tonight, I'm going to talk to you about spring smallmouth fishing on the Yough Reservoir. From growing up and fishing PA a lot in the local tournaments, Yough Reservoir is one of a lot of the tournament circuits hit. I'm going to start with a little bit of history on it, and then we're going to go into how I approach the lake and the stuff I do before I even get on the water to start practicing. Some of the history of the Yough Reservoir is its flood control reservoir in southwestern Pennsylvania, western Maryland. The lake was formed in 1944 by damming the river upstream from Confluence, PA. The Yough Dam is an earth structure, 180 foot high, and it's owned by the Army Corps of Engineers. And as many of the people in PA know, the lake fluctuates from spring, summer to the winter pool, which is literally almost a stream river running through. Some of the stuff I do prior to even getting to the lake, I use a lot of the Navionics Go Boating app on my phone. With what's happened over the last year since a sonar logging event down on Yough Lake, there's now a lot of depth contour added to the map. It's no longer just the blue blob that about everyone in PA knows for whenever they have the Navionics chips or even Lowrance. Navionics now has the majority of the lake mapped, and the lake was mapped numerous times in the main channel. There's just some of the offshoots that have not been hit yet, and they will be mapped this coming summer. So the whole lake should be finished by the end of the year. Second thing I do also is try to figure out where the water is going to be on it before I even get there, because then I can look in my phone on what points might, originally seem deep, but might actually be able to be hit. And also, if you have the opportunity to get there and live locally and go when the lake's actually down in the winter, you can. I use my phone a lot. I'll walk out on some of the rocks and actually mark and get GPS coordinates to different areas of structure and house foundations, even the bridges and some of that stuff that's under the lake. So whenever I go there to fish it in the upcoming months, I can go plug all the GPS coordinates right into my Lowrance and pull right in and get right on top of the structure, the cover, the foundation, wherever you're trying to fish. The picture there is actually, it's kind of a blurry one. I couldn't find too good of one. That's the bridge that's actually very close to where the launch ramp, to where the Army Corps launch ramp is, that was flooded whenever they created the reservoir that originally got people from one side to the other of the Yough River. How I determine where to fish, I take a bunch of factors into mind, since we're talking about spring, but on the lake in general. What time of year is it? If it's summer months, I'll go down actually a little bit to the southern part of the lake, because the water is a little bit warmer and it's a little bit shallower than the northern part, as you've seen. What I take into account the barometric pressure, if it's rising, dropping, stuff like that, to see where the fish would move on the areas that I would normally hit on the lake. And whenever I get there, and even a little bit beforehand, best I can, I take the water level into account, because if you got high pull, there's a lot of brush and structure and some fallen trees that'll come into play. Whereas if you're at summer pull or even low pull, it takes a lot of the fallen timber and stuff like that out, and even if it's low enough, it takes some of the docks even out of account on it. A little bit I'll take into the discharge rate of the dam just to see if there's any current flowing through. I use it a little bit, not a whole ton. Majority of that I'll use if they are pulling water. I'll go to the deeper spots and try to focus on some fish hanging out on the points right where the curve is, where the dam is. First thing I do when I arrive at Yough Lake, I turn my units on, put the navionics chip in, and I make sure I turn the chip to fishing chip layer mode, which you can see on your rants, the ones I use. They're the ones I know how to work. I don't use much Hummingbird to really help you out there, but I make sure to turn the fishing chip layer mode on, because that gets you the Sonar Chart layer. The Sonar Chart layer actually is the renamed version of fishing chip, and the Sonar Chart layer is that layer that you probably heard about, that as people record and upload their sonar logs, the depth contour gets more and more accurate and better. Also with my Lowrance, what I like doing too, I'll talk about a little bit. Whenever I mark this stuff on my phone, I'll actually mark it in the Navionics boating app as a community edit. Since I'm running touchscreens, you can actually access the community edits on your touchscreen as a point. And if you add it as a community edit, though, it's available for everyone to get, unlike a waypoint, where if you add it in as a waypoint, that's only to your unit specific. It's not going to be uploaded into the system. But I'll do the community edit so I can put it, so I can update my Navionics chip and get all of them right on my Navionics chip. Normally when I put them in, I don't put exact locations, but I put around a certain vendor mark or something like that, just so I know where it is whenever I'm quickly glancing at my chip. Like I said, the Navionics chip, as far as my knowledge, is the only chip right now that has the Yough Lake almost completely mapped. I know Inside Genesis, people have been using it and have portions, but I haven't heard that they've had a lot of the lake yet. Something else that I like to do with my unit, I like to do the depth shallow water shading on it. And the reason I do that is because when you plug your Navionics chip in, it shows you, all the levels at normal pull. If for instance, it's low pull, I'll actually shade down farther just so I know whenever I'm staring at my unit, in my mind, where the water level actually is and what I should be looking at out, from there. What I do once I get on there, I'll check out some of the areas. I brought this picture up. This is actually what the lake looks like on the Navionics chips. I normally start on areas such as right down at the bottom where that inlet is. And the reason being is I'll start there to figure out where the fish are at that day. I'll get there, pull in, put my unit on structure scan with down scan, and I'll make a couple passes over it, making sure that I kind of get a good picture of what's there. And as I'm making passes, you can see where the fish are out to the sides as well, because how deep the lake is. And I'll show you that on the next page here. This is kind of the view I'm looking at here. And you're getting out on the sides, and as you're making passes over it, you can see out, and you can actually take your marker, touch your screen where you're seeing fish, and mark it with, and actually put a waypoint there. Which, the neat thing about that is you can put the waypoint there, and your GPS knows that it's off to this side, or it's not directly under your boat. So as I'm making passes, the more waypoints I put in of bigger fish that I know are bass on it and smallies, I'll mark it, and then I'll switch from that to the map view. And when you switch to the map view, you can see where all your marks are depth wise according to where that point or area that you're trying to, trying to find them on it looks like, so you can kind of get the idea of what depth they're at, or if they're transitioning from deeper to shallow to spawn in the spring, or if yeah, the cold front come in and pushes them down a little bit, you can see where they're at. And once I do that, I'll throw at them just to see how active they are, or what they're hitting, or just try to get a bite and see what's actually down there. Once I mark them, especially on Yough Lake, I use a couple different techniques. If you're going from shallow to deep, I'll throw a Dropshot Rib, normally with either a poor boy Darter Jr. or even a crosstail shad on it. I've always had luck with them. I normally go with a dark pumpkin, or even, sometimes even a shad color, depending what kind of bait's in the water there. And this on the screen's actually the rig's called a Yough rig, and I've had tremendous success with it. Kind of gives a little bit different of a perspective in the water than what most of the fish are used to seeing. And I've actually used this rig on Yough Lake a lot, and have fished behind people and pulled fish out like crazy. They also call it a nail rig, just because of how it's, how you kind of rig it up with the weight in the front. If you're someone, like, I know a lot of people don't like going deep or trying to figure out some of those points at times. If you like going shallow, there's also a lot of different ways that I fish that. You can fish it in the spring, you can fish it in the summer, even a little bit in the fall. But normally in the fall, it's the water's so down that it takes a lot of the stuff, a lot of the cover and the laydowns out of play. But I've had good success up on Yough Lake as well, fishing shallow, flipping the docks, falling timber around the main bridge pylons that are up there. Even if you can find a nice rocky riprap bank, I pulled a lot of nice fish off that with crankbaits and stuff, and swim jigs. When I'm targeting docks and timber, I usually pay close attention to what the bottom structure is around it, or even the bank around it. Because I find that if you can find docks that have that are on either that have gravel bottom, or even gravel bottom with some boulders, I know there's a couple areas that got them. I normally find good smallmouth on those. Also, if you can find, docks or laydowns that are around a deep point, had some decent luck there as well, using a couple different techniques. Also, I've had some, if you can find way back in coves, get some nice trees down that they'll actually, even if it's not sunny, but I've had it work a lot when it's real sunny out, they'll actually sit underneath the trees that are in the water, and I've pulled a bunch of nice ones off of some of those trees. And just from what I found from being on the lake and running it a bunch, I found that there's more rocky bottom and docks set up how I normally will find the fish up in the PA side than in the Maryland side. That's just from an observation I've had when I've been down there. Up around the docks, some of the techniques that I've had a lot of success with are wacky rig Senkos. Those you can use in almost any color. I've actually been up there and thrown them a ton, and actually ran out of colors and just started throwing any color under the sun at them. And believe it or not, they hit almost anyone I've thrown at them. The Yough rig Senko, which is just like the rig before, kind of exactly like that. I've used that up around shallower on the docks just to get around the posts that people put in the water to anchor them. Also, I've thrown them really shallow to where you don't think of a fish under them, and just dragged them down the sides of the docks. And I've actually caught that one in the picture there. Actually came out of underneath the dock, probably in less than a foot of water. I've also used a free fall of Poor Boy's Darter Jr. and actually I've even done it with an Erie Darter. So I mean, about anything up there that I've tried around docks, either you got to get them to the bottom and get them off the bottom around the posts, or they're sitting up underneath the dock, or even actually underneath a lot of the boats that are there, depending what time of year and depending how quick they get the boats in the water. And also every now and then I'll throw a swim jig out, kind of paralleling all the boats, just straight down the boat side, and then go on the outside of the docks and pull them right down the back, right down the deep side. And every now and then I'll get one up there, but it's not something that I, throw a lot of. Anytime you're on the water there, because it's the reservoir and how, and the history behind it, I always run it at least once before I leave to see if there's any new structure that I've missed previously, or anything such as in the coves where there's a bunch of foundations. I'll just mark the cove, because on the lake like this, the more info you can get and the more spots you can get marked, the more of a chance you're going to catch fish and find them quicker. Because I found a couple of coves that actually had a bunch of foundations when I was running it in the fall. I couldn't fish them in the fall because they were above water, but I marked them on my GPS, because when it comes spring and I get back on the water, even summer, you can take a crankbait, spinnerbait, chatterbait, whatever you're comfortable throwing, throw it way deep in the cove and bring it out and bounce it off the foundation. More than likely, with as many foundations as I found in some of the coves, there's going to be fish there. Just what kind you're going to find. Doing that, you will find, if any of you know Yough Lake, there's a bunch of different species in there. You have a chance of catching anything up shallow. I'm going to say this one here, this picture's actually, I caught the fish back in a cove. I was on a great smallmouth bite, and as I was back there, I was actually throwing in that picture, it's the Erie Darter, not the junior, the bigger one. I was throwing it weightless on laydowns and had that big largemouth come out where I was pulling smallmouth out left and right. They're all mixed. The kid who actually took the picture on the boat was throwing a spinnerbait and laid in with a pretty good muskie on it. I have every now and then also you'll run into pike, to walleye, depending what time of year you're there and what kind of structure you're fishing and what lure you're fishing. Also, as I'm looking at the lake, what I keep in mind is that, especially for spring fishing, is that during the winter months, the lake's so low that right where you launch your boat at the Army Corps ramp, it's literally as wide as a river going through. Which means, if you know a little bit about the lake, all the way up in the Maryland side, you got a little water, if that, a little bit more in some of the channels. But when you're in PA, around the dam area, or even between the bridge and the dam, your channel's about 50, 60 foot. Up at the dam, you're at 100 and something. So even at low water, there's a lot of water in the PA side to where the fish will gather. And every time I've been there, I've done better on the PA side than I ever have on the Maryland side. I've caught fish on both, but I've always done better up in PA. And this is the breakdown of Yough Lake on my charts, how I use them. From left to right, you're going from the dam up in PA all the way down to the bridge, right where you're going to launch at, and where Yough Lake Marina is. Down into the last picture here actually shows the Maryland border, and there's more of the lake to go, but when we did it, we weren't able to get any further. The time of year we did it, right about where it cut off, it was about a foot, foot and a half, 2 foot of water, and we weren't going to put our boats through it trying to chart the rest of it. We were just going to wait till spring. If you have any questions, please feel free to submit them to me up in the question and answer box. I can answer anything you want, clarify some stuff, give you more insight. I just want to kind of know what you guys have as questions. Okay. I haven't got any questions or anything, so I'm going to end the webinar here. If any of you think of anything that you want to ask me or any of that, just send me an email. You should be getting it in the follow-up or already have it. Feel free to send me an email. I'll answer any questions you have. Thank you for attending, and I hope you enjoyed the webinar.